My sister paints me as a cheater just before my wedding. The whole family believes her. The night before my wedding was supposed to be perfect. It was meant to be a celebration of love, laughter, and the excitement of a new chapter. My best friends had planned a bachelorette party that walked the fine line between fun and elegant, just the way I liked it. The venue was a rooftop lounge, high above the city, with twinkling lights that mirrored the stars above. I should have felt on top of the world. Instead, there was a weight in my chest, a nagging feeling I couldn't shake. I adjusted the silky, white dress that clung to my body, a playful nod to the wedding gown I'd be wearing tomorrow. My friends surrounded me, their smiles wide, their laughter bright. The drinks flowed freely, and the music pulsed through the air, but my mind was elsewhere. And then I saw her. Natalie. My half-sister stood across the room, her glass raised in a mock toast, her lips curved in that knowing smirk. She wasn't invited, and yet, here she was, as if she had every right to be part of my happiness. My stomach tightened. Natalie had never been one to miss an opportunity to cast a shadow over my life. I had tried to mend things with her for years, despite her blatant dislike of me. She resented me for simply existing, for being the proof that our father had a life before her mother. Even though I was older, she acted as though I had stolen something from her. Her right to be an only child, her father's full attention, her peace of mind. It didn't matter that we barely spoke growing up, that I had never once taken anything from her. In her eyes, my presence was a crime I could never atone for. I turned away, willing myself to ignore her, but the tension in my shoulders refused to ease. "You okay?" Jade, my best friend since college, appeared at my side, her expression tinged with concern. She had been my rock for years, the one person I trusted completely. "I'm fine," I lied, just a little overwhelmed. She followed my gaze, her lips pressing into a thin line when she spotted Natalie. "Do you want me to ask security to remove her?" I considered it. I wanted to say yes, to put an end to whatever she was planning before it even started. But I knew Natalie. She thrived on drama. If I reacted, I'd be the one accused of ruining the night. No, she wanted me rattled. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. "Let her stay," I muttered, taking a sip of my drink. "If she tries anything, I'll handle it." Jade hesitated but nodded. "Just say the word." The party continued, and for a while, I managed to push Natalie from my mind. Ryan, my soon-to-be husband, sent me a sweet text, reminding me how much he loved me, how excited he was to marry me. It was exactly what I needed to ground myself again. He was my future, my safe place. No one, not Natalie, not anyone, could take that away from me. Then, just as the night was winding down, Natalie made her move. I was near the bar when she approached, her perfume sickly sweet, her presence unwelcome. "You look beautiful tonight," she said, her voice dripping with something that wasn't quite admiration. I forced a smile, unwilling to play her game. "Thanks." She leaned in slightly, her breath warm against my ear. "Enjoy it while it lasts." I stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" She pulled back, her grin widening. "Nothing. Just big night tomorrow, right? Would be a shame if something ruined it." The hair on the back of my neck rose. I wanted to ask her what she meant, to demand an answer, but she had already turned away, disappearing into the crowd. I exhaled sharply, my mind racing. Was this just another one of her empty threats? Or was she actually planning something? I glanced around the room, looking for Jade, but she was deep in conversation with someone else. I could tell her later. Right now, I needed a moment alone. Slipping away from the crowd, I made my way to the private balcony. The city stretched out before me, vast and unbothered. I pulled out my phone and clicked on the camera. Recording small moments had become a habit of mine, one I had picked up after years of dealing with people like Natalie. Proof was power. Proof kept people like her from rewriting history. I wasn't sure why, but I felt the need to capture something now. Maybe it was my gut warning me. Maybe I just wanted to remember this night, despite the unease creeping in. I hit record and whispered to myself, this is the last night before my life changes forever. No matter what happens, I know my truth. I ended the video and tucked my phone away. It was silly, maybe even paranoid, but it made me feel a little better. When I stepped back inside, the air felt different. People were staring, murmuring. My chest tightened. I turned, following their gazes to the massive TV screen mounted on the wall. My heart stopped. A video was playing, and it was me in the footage. Only it wasn't real. The screen showed a dimly lit room, my figure tangled with someone who wasn't Ryan. The angle was bad, the quality grainy, but it looked real enough to ignite the whispers, to spread doubt. I felt sick. My hands trembled as I turned to the person standing near the TV controls.
Jade.
My breath caught in my throat. She was standing next to Natalie, her expression unreadable. My best friend. The one person I had trusted completely. My heart pounded in my chest as Ryan's name lit up on my phone. A call. A question. A doubt. And just like that, the night before my wedding turned into my worst nightmare. I couldn't breathe. The video looped again, the grainy footage flashing across the screen like a death sentence. Gasps rippled through the crowd, murmurs rising in volume, and my heart pounded so hard I thought it might shatter. I wanted to scream, to tell them it wasn't real, but my voice wouldn't come. My throat was dry, constricted with panic. Ryan's name still glowed on my phone, his call waiting for an answer. My fingers trembled as I swiped to accept it. Ryan. What the hell is going on, Carrie? His voice was sharp, edged with disbelief and something else, hurt. I looked around wildly, searching for someone, anyone, who might defend me. But all I saw were faces twisted in suspicion. Even people who had known me for years were whispering, their gazes flickering between the screen and me. Ryan, you have to believe me. It's fake, I said, my voice shaking. I swear to you, I would never. The video played again, and I felt bile rise in my throat. I forced myself to focus, to think. I had recorded my own video earlier. If I could just find it. I stood frozen, my heart slamming against my ribs as the fake video looped on the screen. The murmurs around me grew into an unbearable roar, a whirlwind of judgment and disbelief. My mind screamed at me to move, to speak, to do something, but my body refused to cooperate. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, my worst fears taking shape in the form of pixelated betrayal. The party, once filled with warmth and celebration, had turned into a pit of scrutiny. I could feel the eyes on me, piercing, suspicious. Even my closest friends hesitated, uncertainty clouding their features. And at the center of it all stood Jade and Natalie.
Jade.
My best friend. She had been my anchor, my confidant, my sister in all ways but blood. And yet, here she was, standing shoulder to shoulder with Natalie, her expression unreadable. The air around me turned ice cold as realization crept in. This wasn't just Natalie's doing. Jade was in on it. My phone buzzed in my trembling hand. Ryan. I forced myself to answer, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan, you have to believe me. Tell me it's not real, he interrupted, his voice tight with something between anger and pain. Tell me right now that this is some kind of sick joke. It's fake, I gasped, the sheer desperation in my voice rattling me. Ryan, I swear to you, I would never. He exhaled harshly, cutting me off. I don't know what to think, Carrie. His hesitation was a knife to my chest. My legs wobbled, but I forced myself to stay upright. You know me, I pleaded. You know I wouldn't do this to you. Then how do you explain the video? He snapped. It looks real, Carrie. Damn it, it looks real. My vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to tear the screen down, to shake Ryan until he saw me, really saw me. But fear and doubt were already coiling around his voice, sinking their claws into the man I loved. And Jade, my supposed best friend, stood there, silent, watching me drown. I forced my gaze to her, my stomach twisting at the guilt flickering in her eyes. Why? The single word came out hoarse, barely audible over the whispers and gasps. She didn't answer. Natalie did. Because you don't deserve happiness, she said simply, a wicked smile playing on her lips. Not when you've stolen everything from me. I sucked in a sharp breath. I stole nothing from you. Her laughter was light, casual, as if she hadn't just detonated my life in front of an audience. Oh, but you did. You were always the golden child, weren't you? The firstborn, the perfect one. The one who got his love first. She took a slow step forward, her voice dropping into something venomous. You were a reminder that I was second, that I'd never be enough. Her words cracked through me like a whip. We'd never been close, but this was more than resentment. This was hatred festering for years, boiling over into something cruel and calculated. I turned to Jade, praying for an explanation, for anything that could make sense of this. And you? My voice trembled. You were supposed to be my best friend. Her expression flickered. Guilt, regret, something like shame, but she lifted her chin. You always had everything, Carrie, she murmured. The perfect relationship, the dream job, the kind of life I could only wish for. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. And I was always just there. The sidekick. The backup. Never the one who mattered. A hollow laugh escaped my lips, bitter and sharp. So what? You decided to ruin my life because you were jealous? Jade's silence was answer enough. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here.
Not in front of them.
I straightened my spine, lifting my chin. You think this will break me? My voice was steel now, unwavering despite the tremor in my hands. You think you can tear my life apart and walk away unscathed? Natalie's smirk faltered just slightly, but she recovered. Oh, sweetheart, it's already done. The weight of her words settled over me like a suffocating blanket. My relationship, my reputation, everything I had built was crumbling before my eyes. But then, a flicker of something surfaced in my mind. My video. My breath hitched. The recording. I had filmed myself on the balcony, a mere hour ago, speaking about my excitement for the wedding, oblivious to the storm brewing around me. If I could retrieve it, show it, maybe.
No.
Not maybe. I would prove my innocence. I gripped my phone tighter, determination slicing through the fog of betrayal. You made a mistake, I whispered, just loud enough for Natalie and Jade to hear. Natalie scoffed. Oh, and what's that? I met her gaze, fire igniting in my chest. You underestimated me. Then, without another word, I turned on my heel and walked out. The whispers followed me, the gasps, the betrayal, but I didn't falter. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. The cold night air hit me like a slap as I stepped out of the venue, my heels clicking against the pavement with a fury I hadn't realized I possessed. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear anymore. No, something hotter, sharper, and far more dangerous had taken its place, rage. Natalie and Jade thought they had won. They thought they had backed me into a corner, shattered my world, and left me with no way to fight back. But they didn't know me as well as they thought they did. I wasn't some fragile thing they could break apart with a single blow. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. My fingers trembled as I unlocked my phone. I scrolled through my gallery, my pulse hammering in my ears. Please be here, please be here. And then, there it was. A video from just an hour ago, time-stamped, untouched. In it, my own voice rang clear over the soft hum of the city skyline. This is the last night before my life changes forever. No matter what happens, I know my truth. My truth. I exhaled sharply, my mind already racing through my next steps. This was my proof. A real-time recording of where I had been when Natalie's fake video had supposedly taken place. It wouldn't erase the damage done, not immediately, but it would be the first crack in their carefully constructed lie. The question now was, who would listen? My hands curled into fists.
Ryan.
I had to talk to him before this festered any further. I needed to make him see the truth before Natalie poisoned him beyond repair. My driver arrived within minutes. I gave him Ryan's address, gripping my phone like a lifeline. The ride felt endless, the city lights blurring past as I rehearsed what I'd say. The betrayal still burned, but I couldn't let my emotions control me. I needed to be calm, clear, and undeniable. When we finally pulled up to Ryan's apartment, I barely waited for the car to stop before stepping out. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself forward, pressing the buzzer. Silence. I pressed it again. Then, finally, his voice, strained and hesitant. "Who is it?" "Ryan, it's me." A pause. A long one. Then, the door buzzed open. I swallowed hard as I stepped inside, making my way to his apartment. My heart clenched when he opened the door. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion.
I had never seen him like this.
And for the first time, I realized this hurt him too. "Ryan," I breathed, stepping forward, but he held up a hand, stopping me in my tracks. "I don't know what to believe right now," he admitted, his voice raw. "I've spent the last hour trying to convince myself that it wasn't real, that you would never do this to me. But then I hear everyone talking, I see that video, and..." He exhaled, shaking his head. "I don't know." A fresh wave of pain slammed into me, but I forced it down. This wasn't the time to break. "I have proof," I said, pulling on my phone. A recording of me outside, alone, at the exact time that video was supposedly taken. "It's time-stamped, Ryan. It proves I was never in that room." His eyes snapped to the screen as I hit play. My recorded voice filled the room, echoing my earlier words. The skyline, the timestamp, my face, all of it undeniable. Ryan watched in silence, his expression shifting, the tension in his jaw easing ever so slightly. When the video ended, he ran a hand down his face. He stopped, inhaling sharply. This changes things." I took a shaky breath, hoping for the words I needed to hear.
"Tell me you believe me."
"Tell me you never doubted me." But instead, he asked, "Why would Natalie and Jade do this?" My throat tightened. "Because they wanted to ruin me. Because Natalie has hated me since the day she learned we were sisters, and Jade..." My voice cracked. "Jade was never really my friend." Ryan exhaled, his expression pained. "I need to think." I searched his face, desperate for certainty. "Ryan, I need you to tell me you believe me." His hesitation was a second too long. A fresh ache bloomed in my chest, but I nodded stiffly. "Take your time." I turned to leave, each step feeling heavier than the last. Just as I reached the door, his voice stopped me. "Carrie." I turned back, hope flaring in my chest. He swallowed hard. "I love you. I need to sort through this." Tears pricked my eyes, but I forced a small nod. "I understand." I walked away before he could see me break. I didn't go home. I needed something more than a place to collapse. I needed a plan. So I drove to the one place I knew I'd find answers. My father's house. If Natalie was willing to go this far to destroy me, it was time I figured out why. Not just the petty resentment, not just the jealousy, the real reason. Because people didn't burn down lives over childhood grudges alone. The moment I arrived, I barely had time to knock before the door was yanked open. My father stood there, his face lined with worry. "I saw the video," he said. "Tell me it's not true." Anger and exhaustion warred within me. "You know it's not." He exhaled, stepping aside to let me in. "I need you to hear something." I followed him to his study, my pulse racing. He gestured to a file on his desk, his expression grave. This is about Natalie." I hesitated, then picked it up. As I skimmed the documents, my blood ran cold. She hadn't just resented me. She had been planning this for years. Emails, bank transfers, conversations recorded, documents showing just how long she had been weaving this web, how she had manipulated Jade, how she had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My hands shook as I lowered the file. "This wasn't about you," my father said quietly. "This was about destroying anything that reminded her of me. And you," he swallowed thickly. "You were the easiest target." A chill ran down my spine. Natalie wasn't just jealous. She had wanted to erase me. My jaw tightened. She won't get away with this. For the first time that night, I felt something like certainty. Natalie had tried to bury me. But she'd underestimated one thing. I wasn't afraid to dig my way back out. And when I did, I'd bring her down with me. The weight of the file in my hands felt heavier than paper should. It was more than just ink and records. It was the sum of Natalie's cruelty, her years of scheming, the web of deceit she had spun around me while I had been too blind to see it coming. I tightened my grip, my nails pressing into the folder as my father watched me carefully. I should have done something sooner, he admitted, his voice weary with regret. I knew she resented you, but I never imagined she'd take it this far. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. You never imagined, or you just never wanted to see it? His face darkened, but he didn't argue. He knew the truth just as well as I did. His negligence had allowed Natalie to fester, to grow into something vengeful and dangerous. But I wasn't going to let her win. I stood up, my movements sharp and decisive. I'm ending this.
How?
I turned to face him, my jaw set in steel. By giving her exactly what she deserves. The next morning, I moved like a woman possessed. Every moment wasted was another second that Natalie's lies twisted deeper into my life. I wouldn't give her that chance. First, I sent copies of the documents to my lawyer. I didn't care what legal loopholes Natalie thought she could hide behind. There had to be something here that could expose her. If she had used bribery, falsified evidence, or anything remotely illegal, I would ensure she paid for it. Then I made a call to the one person who had been on the fence since the beginning. Ryan. He picked up on the third ring, his voice cautious. Hey. I have proof, I said immediately. Real, undeniable proof that Natalie planned this. For years. Silence. Then, where are you? My apartment. I'm coming over. When Ryan arrived, I barely had time to register the exhaustion in his face before I was pressing the file into his hands. Read it.
He did.
With every passing page, his expression shifted. First confusion, then horror, and finally fury. His hands clenched the papers so tightly his knuckles went white. He exhaled sharply, his eyes blazing. She set you up. She manipulated everything. Exactly. I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. And she almost took you away from me. Ryan looked up then, his face torn with guilt. I should have believed you. I didn't answer right away. The truth was, his hesitation had hurt. Deeply. But now wasn't the time to dwell on that. Instead, I said, we can talk about that later. Right now, we need to make sure she can never do this again. He nodded, determination settling over his features. What's the plan? By the evening, the storm was already brewing. I had sent copies of the documents to the company Natalie worked for, ensuring that her professional life would take a hit just as devastating as the one she tried to deal me. Jade, my so-called best friend, received a message too, one with a simple warning. Stay out of my life, or I will make sure everyone knows just how deep your betrayal went. And then the final move. I arrived at my father's house just before dinner. Natalie was already there, sitting at the table like she had tried to burn my world down just days ago. She looked up as I entered, her eyes narrowing. What are you doing here? I smiled, slow and sharp. I came to watch you fall. She scoffed. You're delusional. I tossed the folder onto the table between us. Am I? Her gaze flickered to the papers, and for the first time, I saw it.
Fear.
She grabbed the file, flipping through the pages, her expression growing tighter with every second. Where did you get this? That doesn't matter. I crossed my arms. What matters is that I have it. And now, so does everyone else who needs to see it. Her jaw clenched. You have nothing. I leaned in, lowering my voice. I have everything, Natalie. Every lie, every scheme, every desperate attempt to ruin me. You spent years trying to tear me down, but you forgot something important. She glared at me. And what's that? I smiled. I don't break. The front door opened behind me, and my father stepped in, his gaze hard as he took in the scene. He looked at Natalie, disappointment deepening the lines on his face. I've seen enough. Her face paled. Dad. No, he cut her off, his voice cold. You went too far. This isn't just sibling rivalry, Natalie. This is malice. And I won't stand by and let you destroy this family anymore. I stiffened at the word family. We were never a family. Not really. But watching Natalie's world start to crumble, watching her face twist in disbelief as she realized that she had lost, was more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. "You're lying," she whispered. "You're all turning against me." "No," I said, my voice calm. "You did that to yourself." She looked between us, her hands trembling. For the first time, she seemed small,
Defeated.
but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not after what she had done. "You need to leave," my father said, his voice final. Natalie's mouth opened, but no words came out. And then, slowly, she rose from her chair. She turned to me one last time, her expression unreadable. "This isn't over." I tilted my head. "Oh, but it is." She scoffed, grabbing her purse and shoving past me. A moment later, the front door slammed shut behind her. And just like that, she was gone. A heavy silence filled the room. My father let out a slow breath, rubbing a hand over his face. "I failed you both." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Instead, I simply turned and walked away. That night, as I stood in my apartment, staring at the city lights, Ryan's voice broke the silence. "It's over." I turned to him, my chest aching with something I couldn't quite name. "Not yet." He stepped closer. "What else is there?" I exhaled. "Healing." Ryan nodded, his eyes soft. "Then let's do it together." For the first time in days, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I could rise from this stronger than before. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. The morning after Natalie's downfall should have felt victorious. I should have woken up feeling lighter, freer, like the weight of years of torment had finally lifted. But as I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, the dark circles under my eyes and the tightness in my chest told a different story. It wasn't over. Not really. I had spent so much time fighting against Natalie's cruelty that I hadn't stopped to think about what came next. What did I do now, after the battle had been won? A soft knock on my apartment door pulled me from my thoughts. Ryan. When I opened the door, he stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee, looking at me like he wanted to say 1,000 things but didn't know where to start. "Hey," he said finally, offering me one of the cups. I took it, my fingers brushing against his for just a second longer than necessary. "Hey." He hesitated before stepping inside, his gaze scanning my face. "You didn't sleep, did you?" I let out a soft chuckle, shaking my head. "Not really." Ryan exhaled, setting his coffee down on the counter. "I know yesterday was a lot, but I need you to know something." I swallowed, bracing myself. "What is it?" He took a step closer. "I regret doubting you. I regret every second I let Natalie poison my thoughts about you. And if I could take it back, I would." His words settled heavily between us. I wanted to accept them, to let them soothe the ache of betrayal. But trust wasn't something that could be restored overnight. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "But it's going to take time." Ryan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know. I just want to be here. However you need me to be." I studied him for a long moment, searching for any trace of dishonesty. But there was none. Only sincerity. Only regret. And maybe hope. By midday, my phone was flooded with messages. Some from extended family members who had heard about Natalie's disgrace. Some from old colleagues who had once believed her lies and now wanted to backtrack their words. And then there was my father.
"Dad, we need to talk."
I stared at the message for a long time, my chest tightening with a mix of emotions I didn't want to unpack. I had spent my entire life seeking his approval, only to realize that it had never really mattered. He had let Natalie torment me for years. He had stood by while she turned my life upside down. And now that she was gone, what? He suddenly wanted to talk. I wasn't sure I had the strength for that conversation yet, so I left the message unanswered. Instead, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I went to the lake. It was a place I used to escape to as a teenager, back when Natalie's cruelty had been smaller but still sharp. I would sit on the dock, feet dangling above the water, and dream of a future where I didn't have to fight so hard just to exist. As I walked down the worn path, the scent of pine and fresh water filled my lungs, grounding me. I sat at the edge of the dock, letting my legs swing freely as I stared at my reflection in the rippling water. Who was I now, without the constant war with Natalie defining me? A gentle breeze brushed against my skin, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself just be. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then, footsteps behind me. I turned, half expecting Ryan, but it wasn't him. It was my father. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. The weight of regret settled into the lines on his face as he approached, stopping a few feet away as if waiting for permission to come closer. I didn't grant it, but I didn't tell him to leave either. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. I'm sorry. I let out a breathy laugh, shaking my head. For what, exactly? For all of it. His voice was quiet. For not seeing what she was doing. For letting it go on for so long. I failed you. You did, I said bluntly, because sugarcoating the truth wasn't something I was interested in anymore. He nodded, accepting my words without argument. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I see it now. Everything. And I hate myself for it. I swallowed, the lump in my throat growing painful. Why now? His face twisted with something like grief. Because I lost one daughter to her own hatred. And I don't want to lose the other. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away. You don't get to just say that and expect things to be okay. I know, he exhaled. But if there's any way I can start making it up to you, I want to try. I looked back at the water, the ripples distorting my reflection. I didn't know if we could ever fully mend the broken pieces between us. But maybe, just maybe, we could try. After a long pause, I whispered, I don't know if I can forgive you yet. He nodded. Take all the time you need. We sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the gentle lapping of the water against the dock. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a start. In the weeks that followed, things didn't magically fall into place. There were still difficult conversations to be had. Still wounds that would take time to heal. But the difference now was that I wasn't fighting alone. Ryan and I found our way back to each other, slowly, carefully. He worked to rebuild the trust he had shattered, and I let myself believe that maybe love wasn't just another battlefield. My father and I took small steps, conversations over coffee, shared silences that weren't as heavy as they used to be. It would never be the relationship I once dreamed of, but it was something. And as for Natalie, she disappeared from our lives, just as quickly as she had tried to destroy mine. Her name became nothing more than a ghost, a cautionary tale of what hatred could do to a person. I stopped waiting for another attack, another scheme. I let her go. Because in the end, she was never the villain I needed to defeat. She was just someone who had already lost. And I had won. The sun dipped below the horizon as I stood on my balcony, the city glowing beneath me. For the first time in years, the war was over. And I was finally free.